Xiaohu lunges forward, his small frame quivering with a terror he can't hide. Despite the paralyzing fear, he doesn't stop his desperate charge. His expression is a twisted mask of dread, but deep within his wide, watery eyes, a faint ember of defiance remains. He sinks his teeth into the villager's arm with primal ferocity, desperate to free Chu Yun from her pinned position. Lacking weapons or training, the boy relies solely on his teeth and instinct. His efforts are met with a chilling, unnatural silence. The creatures inhabiting these human shells have long since moved beyond the reach of physical pain. The villager doesn't flinch, his grip on Chu Yun remaining ironclad. Yet Xiaohu's interference has inadvertently placed him in the path of the approaching white freak. The boy now stands as a shield between the girl and the nightmare, his presence a shield born of pure chance. Blinded by the caustic lime powder Chu Yun had used earlier, the white freak fumbles through the dark. It reaches out, its appendages finding not the girl, but the boy standing in her stead. Sensing a warm host, the sightless creature doesn't hesitate. It begins to coil around Xiaohu's small, trembling body with terrifying speed. Slimy, black filaments force their way into the boy's mouth, sliding past his teeth to latch directly onto his central nervous system. In a heartbeat, the light of humanity vanishes from Xiaohu's eyes, leaving them dull, empty, and glassy.
Mama!
A horrific smile spreads across his face, even as tears stream down his cheeks. The parasite's intrusion has flooded his mind with cruel, distorted visions of comfort.
No! Stop it! Get away from him!
Chu Yun screams in despair as she witnesses the creature's gruesome burrowing. She fights against her captor with renewed fury, but she is still held fast against the earth.
Saintess! No, not him! That's the wrong body!
The villager pinning her, his own legs shattered and useless, releases her hands. He begins a desperate, pathetic crawl toward the boy on all fours. From his vantage point, Lin Yi watches the scene with a mix of confusion and urgency. The glowing threads of danger had pointed to Xiaohu, yet the boy had just saved her through pure chance. Was the threat from Xiaohu himself, or what he was becoming? As the freak fully integrates with the boy, the thread between him and Chu Yun snaps and disappears.
Xiao Yun, catch this.
He flings his blade toward her, the metal flashing momentarily in the dim, muddy light.
Go for the bulge on their backs. That's their only weakness.
Lin Yi bellows the instruction while still struggling against his own attacker. It's the only help he can offer while pinned to the ground. Chu Yun doesn't waste a second. She snatches the knife from the dirt and springs into action with survival-driven focus.
Stay away from her! Don't you dare touch the Saintess!
The crawling villager snags her ankle, trying to pull her back. Chu Yun snarls and drives the blade deep into the fleshy protrusion on his spine. He clings to her with mindless tenacity. She twists the handle with all her strength, feeling the sickening resistance of muscle and nerve. She recalls the lessons of past battles, how the others severed the connections of the mantis wolves. If this lump is where the control lies, she will destroy it. In another corner of the village, Lin Yi and Chu Kai are fighting for their lives. The situation is growing more dire by the second. Chu Kai's world is a blur of gray and shifting shadows. Forced to rely solely on his heightened hearing, he tracks the movements of his attackers through the cacophony. But the strain of overusing his abilities has left him dangerously weak. Every dodge is a battle of its own. Draining what little strength he has left, there is no room for a counterstrike. Survival is his only focus as his body nears its breaking point. Lin Yi is slightly more mobile. Lacking any caustic powder, he improvises, scooping up handfuls of mud to hurl at the villager's eyes. He fights a desperate battle to close the distance between himself and his flagging friend. But the villagers move with an unnatural, twitchy speed. Their parasite-enhanced nervous systems allow them to sidestep his attacks with insulting, inhuman ease.
You're blind, aren't you? Poor little thing, struggling in the dark.
The villager hunting Chu Kai mocks him, his flat eyes noticing the boy's tightly shut lids and trembling frame.
Don't be afraid. Just surrender your body to me, and I'll mend those broken eyes of yours. I'll make you whole again. I'll give you more than just sight. I'll let you taste pure, unadulterated bliss that your human mind can't even fathom.
The villagers' eyes bulge obscenely in their sockets, the pupils dilating to an impossible size. The parasite within is eager, desperate to trade its failing, middle-aged vessel for a younger, stronger one.
Believe me, once you've felt the joy I bring, you'll never want to leave. You'll thank me for the relief. This world is nothing but a cycle of agony and grief. I can erase it all. I can make you forget every single sorrow you've ever known.
A sneering, twisted smile stretches across the villager's face. Focused on its new prize, the parasite ignores the physical limits of its current host, pushing the body to move with reckless, bone-snapping speed. Chu Kai's exhaustion finally catches up to him. His legs buckle, his reflexes failing just as the creature lunges for the kill. Just as the villager prepares to strike, a heavy object swings toward his skull from the shadows. The creature is forced to abort its attack, spinning around to face a new threat. A figure stands there, a length of steel rebar gripped in his broad hands. His expression is one of grim, unwavering focus.
Took you long enough. You're too slow.
Despite his blindness, Chu Kai hasn't been unaware. He had tracked the newcomer's approach through the chaos, sensing the weight of his footsteps long before the strike landed. Lu Linhai stands his ground, the heavy steel rebar resting momentarily on his shoulder. He looks at Chu Kai with a mix of profound relief and deepening concern.
I got here as quickly as I could. Kai, what's happened? Your eyes? They aren't opening.
Chu Kai opens his mouth to respond, but his expression suddenly shifts to one of sharp, instinctive alarm.
Behind you. Move now.
A sudden gust of wind signals the villager's next strike. Chu Kai tries to pull back, but his exhausted limbs refuse to cooperate, feeling as heavy and sluggish as lead. But the attacker is intercepted before his claws can find their mark. Moving with a speed that rivals the parasite-driven villagers, Lu Linhai swings the rebar in a wide, punishing arc. The impact is bone-jarring and final.
Tell me you're not actually going blind. We'll find a way to fix this, Kai. I promise you. Even if your sight doesn't come back, we're not leaving you behind. I'll be your eyes. I'll protect you with my life if I have to.
Chu Kai remains silent, his jaw tight. If he could see, he'd be burning both Lu Linhai and Lin Yi with a murderous glare. The sentimentality is as grating to him as the situation is dire. Still, he can't help but be impressed by the raw physical prowess Lu Linhai is displaying. The boy has transformed into a formidable, lethal combatant. Lin Yi falls back, joining their side. The three allies stand back to back, forming a small island of resistance in the middle of the chaotic street.
Where's Zhang Cheng? Why the hell isn't he here with you?
Who knows? He's playing his mystery man routine again, said he had business to attend to, and told me to get to you guys first. The whole distraction with the rats and the birds? That was all his idea. He's always 5 steps ahead.
Linhai, forget about us. You have to go and find Xiao Yun right now. The Saintess is hunting her. She's desperate for a new host. You have to protect my sister.
A short distance away, Chu Yun desperately hacks at the coarse black fibers anchoring the parasite to its human host. Even the small, ragged tear she makes near the creature's spine is enough to send a violent shock through its system. The parasite's control begins to fray and falter. The villager's frame erupts in uncontrollable spasms, his face twisting into a grotesque mask of agony. Yet, he refuses to release his ironclad grip. Nearby, the white freak has fully submerged itself within Xiao Hu's small body. Thick, hair-like filaments burst from the boy's eye sockets, liquefying his pupils in a sickening, silent instant. But the parasite is not without its own wounds. The lime powder has left it blind and confused, unable to emerge from the hollow, black pits where the boy's eyes once were.
No! This is wrong. This body, it's defective. It's too weak.
The creature shrieks through the boy's vocal cords, its voice a wet, dissonant rasp of dawning realization.
Where is the girl? I can't find her. Where did she go? Bring her to me. I demand her body. Find her and bring her to me.
At the Saintess's frantic command, another villager breaks from the chaos and sprints toward Chu Yun with predatory focus. He moves with a speed that defies human biology, a blur of motion closing the gap in seconds. Chu Yun, exhausted and pinned, has no hope of dodging the collision. Before the villager can reach her, a flash of steel cuts through the dark. A boning knife buries itself deep into the center of the attacker's forehead with a wet, final thud. The razor-sharp boning knife found its mark, driving deep into the villager's skull right between the eyes. The impact sent the creature stumbling backward, the blade's tip grinding against bone as it was forced to retreat step by agonizing step. Close behind came the bloodletting knife, a silver blur that carved through skin and muscle alike. It left a trail of ragged, weeping gashes across the villager's form, a brutal follow-up to the initial strike. With a final, forceful shove, the boning knife propelled the target toward the waiting swarm. The ground rats, driven to madness by the metallic tang of fresh blood, lunged forward in a frantic, squealing heap. The vermin surged up the villagers' legs, their teeth sinking into the raw, exposed flesh. They were a tide of insatiable hunger, burrowing deep into the body as they tore away every scrap of meat they could find. Deep within the host, the parasitic freak felt the heat of the rat swarm. It knew the body was finished. This vessel was no longer a sanctuary, but a tomb. Grotesque, bulging eyes erupted from the hollow sockets, and the skin between the shoulder blades began to heave. The parasite writhed in desperation, trying to tear itself free from the dying man and flee into the shadows. But the sky offered no mercy. Above the carnage, the monstrous birds had been waiting for their opening, and they finally struck. The tattered avians dove with terrifying speed. Their talons lashed out, sinking deep into the quivering protrusion on the villager's spine, anchoring them to the prize. Their beaks became hammers of bone, pecking relentlessly at the exposed parasite. With each strike, they ripped away chunks of slimy, translucent meat, ignoring the host's silent agony. The scavengers tossed their heads back, sliding the viscous chunks of the freak down their throats with a sickening squelch. In a last-ditch effort, black hair-like fibers erupted from the villager's back, lashing out like whips to entangle the predatory birds. But the birds were toxic themselves, their rotting flesh dripping with a corrosive slime. The moment the black fibers touched them, they shriveled and recoiled, scorched by the acidic discharge. Two more boning knives whistled through the air, their blades catching the dim light as they streaked toward the villagers surrounding Lin Yi. Despite the creature's unnaturally fast reflexes, the knives didn't miss. They curved in mid-flight, tracking their targets like heat-seeking missiles.
It's Uncle Ann. Those are his knives.
Startled by the sudden aerial intervention, Lin Yi quickly scanned the periphery of the village, his heart hammering against his ribs. From the northern edge of the village, a Cheng Dao emerged. His face was set in a grim mask of absolute freezing fury. He radiated a cold, palpable rage that seemed to lower the temperature of the night air around him. One hand gripped a heavy bone-chopping knife, while the other dragged the limp, unconscious body of Brother Lei behind him. Brother Lei was reduced to a heap of wet mud, and Cheng Dao had stripped him of his clothes, using the fabric to bind him and his own shotgun into a humiliating, tangled mess. The butcher knives danced in a lethal orbit around Cheng Dao, striking out at the villagers with the speed and unpredictability of a lightning storm. He steered the blades with terrifying precision. No matter how the villagers twisted or dove, the knives always circled back, relentless in their pursuit of the kill. It was clear Cheng Dao had seen through the villagers' facade. He knew they weren't human, not anymore. He knew they were immune to pain, and that conventional strikes to their organs would do nothing to stop the parasites within. So, his knives did something far more cruel. They methodically carved wound after wound into their flesh, turning the villagers into living banquets for the ravenous ground rats. Lin Yi had no idea how the butcher had survived Brother Lei's shotgun blast, but seeing him alive and fighting brought a wave of overwhelming relief. Uncle Anne's arrival was like a powerful sedative, instantly calming the group's frayed nerves and grounding them in the face of the nightmare.
Thank God you're alive, Uncle Anne.
Wait, why did you think Uncle Anne was dead?
Lu Linhai turned back to Lin Yi, his brow furrowed in genuine bewilderment. Having been separated during the earlier chaos, he was completely in the dark about the events that had led them to believe the butcher had fallen.
Forget about that. We don't have time for a recap.
Chu Kai's voice cut through the air, sharp and demanding. He was clutching his eyes, his face pale with pain and frantic worry.
Get to Little Yun, now. The Saintess is after her body. She's going to be their primary target. I'm on it. You can't see a damn thing right now, so you stay put.
Lu Linhai said, his eyes flicking toward Lin Yi with a heavy sense of responsibility.
Lin Yi, keep an eye on him. Don't let him wander off into the dark. He's blind as a bat for the moment. You have to be his eyes. Stop talking like that, it's only temporary.
Before Lin Yi could even finish his sentence, Lu Linhai had already pivoted and vanished into the night, sprinting toward Chu Yun's location with reckless abandon. The sudden rain of butcher knives had driven back most of the villagers closing in on Chu Yun, but the one already pinned to the ground refused to let go. He held onto her hand with a frantic, bone-crushing death grip.
Where is she? I can't see. Where is my new vessel?
The sight of the child's hollow, sightless eye sockets combined with that raspy, unnaturally high-pitched voice created a wave of pure, unspeakable dread.
Saintess! She's right here! The body you want is within reach? I have her! Don't let her get away! Mine! That body will be mine!
Following the shout, the white freak forced Zhao Hu's small, broken body to lurch forward, dragging itself across the mud. The lime powder had done its work. No eyes regenerated in the sockets. Instead, a writhing mass of black, hair-like fibers sprouted out, waving in the air with a sickening, predatory excitement.
Xiao Hu, can you hear me? Please, wake up.
But her desperate pleas fell on deaf ears. There was nothing left of the boy but a hollowed-out shell. Chu Yun took a shuddering breath and violently yanked the knife out of the villager's back, the wet sound of the blade's exit echoing in the small space.
Xiao Hu, I'm so sorry.
She gripped the hilt until her knuckles turned white, her eyes fixed on the approaching horror. The moment it crossed the line, she would strike. As the distorted form of Zhao Hu lurched closer, a familiar voice shattered the eerie silence of the struggle.
Little Yun, I've got you!
With a heavy, sickening thud, Lu Linhai swung his rebar with every ounce of his strength, slamming the metal bar directly into Zhao Hu's head. The freak inside the child's body sensed the oncoming danger, but it was too late. The small, frail vessel it inhabited lacked the explosive power needed to dodge the blow. Blind and uncoordinated thanks to Chu Yun's earlier attack, the parasite had no way to track the trajectory of the strike until it was already upon it.
The Saintess.
Lu Linhai's blow sent the child crashing into the mud, his body skidding several feet before coming to a halt.
Protect the Saintess! Save her!
The villager pinned to the dirt finally released his grip on Chu Yun, frantically trying to crawl toward the fallen boy. But his movements were sluggish and jerky. Chu Yun had already severed the black fibers connecting his nerves, leaving his body a poorly coordinated marionette. Realizing he couldn't reach his master alone, he began to howl for his companions, his voice a distorted bark of command. His cries went unanswered. Most of the villagers were already buried under a roiling tide of rats, unable to break free from the thousands of tiny, biting mouths. The crazed rodents were tearing the villagers apart, ignoring their inhuman strength and focusing only on the feast of fresh meat. When the freaks inside tried to abandon their half-eaten hosts and flee, the monstrous birds dove from the sky, pecking the escaping parasites into nothingness before they could find new vessels. One or two villagers who weren't yet surrounded tried to rush to the white freak's defense, their faces twisted with parasitic zeal. But the moment they moved, the butcher knives dancing in the air would intercept them with lethal precision, driving them back toward the waiting, squealing rats.
You piece of trash! You really thought you could lay a hand on little Yun?
Lin Yi stood over the broken villager, swearing under his breath as he tightened his grip on the rebar. He looked down at the creature with a mix of disgust and cold fury. He raised the heavy metal bar high and brought it crashing down onto the villager's head, the sound of the impact flat and final in the night air.
Lin Yi, aim for the back. Hit him right there.
Chu Yun pointed frantically to the jagged wound she had left earlier on the villager's back, the site where the parasite was most exposed.
I know! Zhang Cheng already told me where the weak spots are.
Lin Yi readjusted his stance, aimed for the breach in the villager's spine, and drove the rebar in with every ounce of his remaining strength. But as he struck, the fallen Zhao Hu began to writhe in agony. The child's body twisted and turned in the mud, as if being torn apart from the inside.
Don't leave! Please, don't go!
A pained, high-pitched howl ripped from the boy's throat, a sound so human it seemed impossible in this place of monsters. Lin Yi looked up, his curiosity overriding his caution. He stared at the child, his brow furrowing as he tried to reconcile what he was seeing with what he had been told.
That's strange. I hit the host. Zhang Cheng said these things aren't supposed to feel pain.
He hesitated, his mind racing. He considered finishing the boy off with another blow or simply tossing the body to the waiting rats. But as he drew closer, a mass of soft, white flesh suddenly erupted from beneath Xiao Hu's body, glistening with a sickening, translucent sheen. It was the white freak! In a calculated, predatory move, it had detached from its failing host, using the boy's feigned agony to lure its next victim into range. Xiao Hu's small frame was useless for escape. The parasite knew it needed a new, stronger vessel to survive the night. As Lin Yi raised his rebar for a final strike, the white mass lunged. It was a blur of explosive speed, leaping into the air before he could even blink. The parasite wrapped its cold, fibrous mass around Lin Yi's head, its double-coiled worms already burrowing into his open mouth. Xiao Hu's withered frame was far too frail to sustain his parasite. The white freak understood that survival against the local predators required a more robust vessel. In a sudden motion, it peeled away from the boy, leaving him to howl in agony as it sought its next prey. Dark, needle-thin filaments crept across the Baloo dirt, blending perfectly with the midnight shadows. These sensors were practically undetectable. Any person who strayed too close to Xiao Hu's writhing form would unknowingly trigger these hidden feelers. Once touched, the entity would lunge with predatory precision, claiming a fresh host before they could blink. Lin Yi was caught completely off guard. Before he could even register the threat, a pale, wet mass had already clamped onto his skull. He grit his teeth, fighting with every ounce of willpower to keep his mouth sealed tight against the invasion. The creature was relentless, however, plugging his nose and threading its foul fibers deep into his sinuses. A burning agony lanced through his head, accompanied by an unbearable, crawling sensation. He felt the air being cut off, his throat tightening as a wave of sickness washed over him. He desperately suppressed the reflex to gasp. In that fractional moment of weakness, the black threads forced their way past his lips. Coated in a foul, lubricating slime, the parasite pried his jaws apart with sickening ease. He clawed at the translucent flesh, but his hands couldn't find purchase on the oily, rubbery surface.
Lin Yi.
She lunged forward to intervene, but Shu Kai's hand clamped firmly onto her shoulder.
Stay back. It was aiming for you from the beginning. If you step in now, you're just handing yourself over to it.
I've got him.
Lin Yi didn't hesitate, bolting toward the struggling Lu Lin Hai. Lin Yi's hand slid right off the creature's slick hide. He grabbed a handful of dirt, hoping the grit would provide some leverage. It was a waste of effort. The parasite oozed even more lubricant, sliding through his fingers like wet silk.
Get back.
3 blood-stained blades whistled through the air, embedding themselves into the monster's flesh right in front of Lu Lin Hai. Lin Yi seized the handles and pulled with everything he had. To his shock, the creature simply tore itself apart, leaving the pinned segment behind. The sudden release sent Lin Yi tumbling backward as the entity split in 2. The discarded chunk hit the earth, immediately drawing the attention of the circling avian predators. They swooped down. Lin Yi dove out of the way. The birds ignored him, snatching the quivering mass of meat and disappearing back into the dark sky. When he looked back, the rest of the white freak had already slithered deep into Lu Lin Hai's body. A cold wave of despair hit Lin Yi. He had no idea how to extract such a thing without killing the host. Something was off. If the creature was actually attacking him, why hadn't Lin Yi seen a single thread of danger connecting the two? Lu Lin Hai's entire body began to tremble. His face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated revulsion. His eyes squeezed tight as he groaned. Wet, retching sounds came from his throat, accompanied by a muffled, squelching vibration deep within his chest. Was he in pain? Or was it something else? Lin Yi had never been a host himself, but he understood the process. Normally, the parasite's filaments would hijack the nervous system, flooding the brain with artificial pleasure to ensure total submission. Under that chemical influence, a host should be in a state of catatonic ecstasy, welcoming the invader. But Lu Lin Hai wasn't smiling. He looked like he was fighting the urge to vomit up his own soul. The thought had barely registered when Lu Lin Hai collapsed to his knees. With a violent, heave-inducing retch, he sprayed a thick, translucent fluid onto the ground. It was a sickening, stringy mess, laced with those same unmistakable black fibers. The sight was enough to turn anyone's stomach. At the same moment, a collective, mourning wail rose from the infected villagers nearby. It was as if they had all felt a sudden, crushing loss. Gasping for air, Lu Lin Hai stared down at the foul puddle he'd produced, his face pale with lingering disgust.
Lin Hai?
Lin Yi watched him carefully, his eyes narrowed with intense suspicion. Lin Yi couldn't be certain if the man before him was still human, or merely a skin suit controlled by a master puppeteer.
God, that was foul!
Lu Lin Hai climbed to his feet, spitting repeatedly to rid himself of the lingering, rotten aftertaste. His eyes burned with genuine hatred for the creature.
Lin Hai, are you okay?
She tried to step closer, but Chu Kai's grip remained tight, holding her back from the potential threat.
Are you actually Lu Lin Hai?
Lin Yi scrambled up, his hands ready for another fight. On the surface, his friend seemed unchanged. But he knew better. These entities could absorb a host's memories and mimic their personality with terrifying accuracy.
I'm fine. It just tastes like something crawled in there and died. It's absolutely wretched.
Prove it. How do we know you're still you?
Lu Lin Hai stiffened. He searched his mind for a single piece of evidence that could verify his identity. There was nothing. He couldn't exactly slice himself open to prove there was no parasite left inside. Just then, Lin Yi noticed a shift in the chaos. The villagers had stopped their suicidal defense against the rat tide. They were breaking ranks, fleeing into the darkness.
The leader, the white freak, is dead.
The realization hit him. The pieces were finally clicking into place. The only reason those drones had fought so fiercely against the rats and birds was to protect their master. Without that central core to command them, they had no reason to stay and die. They were scattering like shadows in the light. That meant the bile Lu Lin Hai had just purged. That was the white freak itself. But another question remained. Lin Yi looked at his friend with a new sense of bewilderment. Lin Yi had always taken it for granted that Lu Linhai was human. He had even witnessed his friend's death in a previous cycle of time. Even when the Saintess had made her cryptic claims about Lu Linhai being neither man nor monster, Lin Yi had ignored it as mere ramblings. But if his friend was truly just a boy, how had he resisted the parasitism? How had his body managed to kill a creature that had successfully colonized thousands of others? He recalled Chu Kai mentioning that Lu Linhai's heartbeat matched that of the mantis wolves. Lin Yi had dismissed it as a weird physical anomaly at the time. Now he wasn't so sure. There had to be a deeper reason for his friend's unique nature.
Lu Linhai, what exactly are you?
I'm a person! A real flesh and blood human!
Lu Linhai's voice was desperate, his eyes wide with the absurdity of the situation. He had no more answers than the rest of them.
I'm human, I swear it! If I'm lying, let the heavens strike me where I stand!
Save it for later. We don't have time for this.
Lin Yi cut him off sharply. There was no room for an interrogation with the rats closing in. The chattering of thousands of teeth was growing louder. If they didn't move now, they'd be stripped to the bone in minutes.
We're leaving. Move it.
As he shouted, he saw Cheng Dao hoisting the unconscious form of Brother Lei over his shoulder.
Uncle An, leave the dead weight. He'll only slow us down.
Cheng Dao didn't even look at him, simply tightening his grip on the man.
He's seen things. He knows the secrets of these creatures. We need him if we want to understand this nightmare.
Lin Yi hadn't paid much attention to the man since his capture. But as the man was lifted, Lin Yi's eyes caught a glimpse of his bare back between his shoulder blades. There were no scars, no entry wounds, no signs of the black fibers that marked every other host in this godforsaken village. Brother Lei was human. A single uninfected man living among a pack of monsters. The implications were chilling.
Is he really human?
Lin Yi stood there, paralyzed by a chilling realization. The thought of a man commanding a horde of parasitized creatures was almost too much to process. It wasn't just that he had survived. The freaks actually obeyed him. Every command, every gesture, they followed him with an unnatural devotion. Could Brother Lei truly be ignorant of their condition? No, that was impossible. He had lived among them for years. The signs were everywhere, from their hollow eyes to the bizarre, roofless structures surrounding the village. He was the key. And Cheng Dao's suspicion was correct. This man held the answers to the nightmare they were living in. Lin Yi knew one thing for certain: they couldn't leave him behind. Chaos erupted around them. The villagers were fleeing in terror, pursued by a literal sea of rodents. But some of the rats had found a more interesting target: the survivors.
Watch your back!
Lu Linhai lunged forward, his hand tightening around a discarded steel rod. With a sharp tug on Lin Yi's collar, he pulled him out of the line of fire. Thud! The metal bar connected with a sickening crunch, sending a leaping rat spiraling into the dark. Cheng Dao stood his ground, his face a mask of cold fury. His boning knives whirled through the air, forming a lethal spinning shield around the group. A rat lunged, a blade flickered. The creature was sliced clean in two before it could even screech. But Lin Yi saw the truth. The blades were losing their speed. The precision was wavering. Cheng Dao had already fought a war in the forest to return to them. He was running on fumes, his stamina drained to the dregs. If he didn't stop soon, he would collapse, just as Chu Kai had.
We have to get out of here. The swarm is too large. Even the freaks are being overwhelmed. If we stay, we're dinner.
No, we can't!
Lu Linhai planted himself firmly in their path, blocking the exit.
We can't leave yet! Zhang Cheng told me to wait for a signal.
A signal?
Chu Kai's brow furrowed in confusion.
What kind of signal?
Lu Linhai rubbed his temples, his frustration evident.
I don't know. He didn't tell me what it was. He just said we'd know it when we saw it.
We don't have time for guessing games.
Lin Yi's eyes darted across the square. The village was a graveyard. The swarm would be on them in seconds.
We're moving north now.
Before Lin Yi could finish his command, a gasp from Chu Yun stole everyone's attention.
Look, over there.
She pointed a trembling finger toward the southern horizon. The night was no longer dark. A brilliant orange glow pulsed against the sky, turning the clouds the color of rusted iron. The swarm of rats, once focused on the survivors, suddenly shrieked in unison. A wave of pure panic rippled through the black sea of bodies as they turned and surged north with renewed desperation. They weren't hunting anymore. They were fleeing. A wall of fire was consuming the southern end of the village, spreading with a terrifying, predatory speed.
A fire?
Lu Linhai whispered, the flickering light reflecting in his wide eyes. Lin Yi watched the advancing inferno, a grim smile tugging at his lips as the pieces fell into place.
That's it. That's the signal. Zhongcheng did it.
The logic was sound. The village was a tinderbox of dry wood and makeshift shacks. In this climate, a single spark was a death sentence for the buildings. Zhang Cheng was using the fire as a shepherd. The rats and birds, terrified of the heat, were being driven directly into the North Village forest. It was a masterstroke. The swarm would decimate any freaks hiding in the trees, clearing the path while keeping the group safe if they moved fast enough.
We're running south now.
The command was counterintuitive, but Lin Yi's voice brooked no argument. To stay away from the swarm, they had to run toward the fire. The flames would be the only thing the rats wouldn't touch.
Chukai, get on! I've got you!
Lu Linhai stepped in front of his friend, his massive shoulders tensing.
I can walk, Linhai. Don't worry about me.
Walk! You're as blind as a bat right now. Stop being a hero and let me carry you.
Without waiting for a response, Lu Linhai scooped Chukai up in his arms.
Brother, be careful.
Chu Yun's voice was barely a whisper, thick with a sister's dread.
Don't listen to him, Yun. He's exaggerating. My eyes are just a little blurry. I'm fine. Put me down. Seriously, if you must carry me, put me on your back. This is embarrassing.
The back is too slow. I need to be able to drop you or move fast.
Lu Linhai's grip was like iron. For a split second, a flicker of genuine fear crossed his face, but he masked it before anyone could see.
Just let him carry you, Chukai. You're spent. Lu Linhai is the strongest among us. He'll get you through this faster than you can stumble.
I'm not spent. I'm just resting my eyes.
The group moved in a tight, disciplined formation, carving a path through the smoke-choked streets. Lin Yi led the way, his gaze fixed on the southern gate. Behind him, Lu Linhai grunted under the weight of Chukai, followed closely by a pale but determined Chu Yun. And Cheng Dao brought up the rear, the unconscious form of Brother Lei slung over his shoulder like a sack of grain. Lin Yi had traded his knife for Lu Linhai's heavy steel bar. It was a crude tool, but far more effective for batting away the occasional rat that dared to lunge from the shadows. Above them, and Cheng Dao's blades continued their tireless orbit, a lethal barrier of spinning steel that kept the swarm at bay. As they neared the village's southern edge, the scenery grew progressively more horrific. The ground wasn't just covered in the charred remains of rats and birds. Scattered among the debris were the small, shriveled corpses of children, their blackened skins stretched tight over tiny bones. Lin Yi slowed his pace, his stomach churning as the pieces of Zhang Cheng's plan finally fell into place. He knew how the swarm had been smuggled into the village. They hadn't been carried in crates, they had been carried inside the victims.
Hey, over here! Move it!
At the southern gate, Zhang Cheng was a frantic silhouette against the flames, his arms waving wildly to guide them in. The path to safety was a gauntlet of fire. The wooden shacks were collapsing into roiling heaps of ash and cinders. The heat was a physical blow, searing their lungs as they pushed forward. Just as the exit was within reach, a massive, burning support pillar from a nearby shack gave way with a thunderous crack, plunging toward Lu Linhai and Chu Kai. Lu Linhai's reaction was instantaneous. With a grunt of pure adrenaline, he tossed Chu Kai forward out of the pillar's lethal arc. But the weight and the speed were too much. Lu Linhai was pinned, the burning timber inches from crushing him. Two heavy cleavers slammed into the falling pillar with bone-jarring force. The blades wedged themselves deep into the wood, their handles instantly charring and catching fire as they halted the pillar's descent.
Move! Go now!
And Chengdao's voice was a ragged shout, his face twisted with the effort of holding the massive weight with his telekinetic grip. Lin Yi didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, grabbing a dazed Chu Kai by the arm and hauling him to his feet. Together, they sprinted the final few yards, bursting through the southern gate and into the cool, dark night beyond. The night air was cold and sweet compared to the choking heat of the inferno. They had finally made it. The survivors collapsed onto the dry earth, their bodies trembling with exhaustion as they watched the village disappear into a hungry orange fire.
You're a goddamn lunatic, Zhang Cheng.
Lin Yi spat the words between ragged breaths, but there was a flicker of genuine respect in his voice.
To kill a monster, you have to be a little crazy yourself.
Zhang Cheng laughed, the sound hollow and sharp against the crackle of the distant fire.
Besides, I learned most of it from watching you guys.
He turned his attention away from the flames and toward Brother Lei, whom Chengdao had dumped onto the dirt like a broken toy. Zhang Cheng's eyes gleamed with a predatory curiosity. He wasn't interested in the village or the group's escape. He was only interested in the captive.
I never thought I'd see this face again. Uncle Ann, you really outdid yourself bringing him back. I've been dying to have a little chat with him.
He stepped over the bound man, his voice dropping into a mockery of cheerfulness.
Wakey, wakey. Time to get up, Brother Lei. It's a beautiful morning.
Zhang Cheng slapped the man's face several times, his strike sharp and deliberate. Brother Lei groaned, his eyelids fluttering as he slowly returned to consciousness. The first thing he felt was the searing heat on his skin, then the sight of his village, his world being devoured by flames.
No, my village.
The sight jolted him into a state of hysterical panic. He thrashed against his bonds, but his limbs were tied tightly to his own shotgun. He was as helpless as a trussed animal.
Your village? You mean that nest of parasites? Every single person there was already turned, you sick bastard.
Lu Linhai glared down at him, his fists clenched.
He knows, Linhai. He knows exactly what they were.
Zhang Cheng answered with a cold, matter-of-fact certainty.
He knows?
Chu Yun whispered, her face pale with a new kind of horror.
That makes it even more disgusting. You're human. How could you side with those things? You helped them hunt us. You're nothing but scum.
Brother Lei let out a short, cold snort, his expression twisting into one of pure, unadulterated contempt for Lu Linhai's moral outrage. He turned his head, his gaze sweeping over Lin Yi and the others. His eyes were cold, reflecting the fire and a deep, unsettling truth.
Human, you poor, deluded idiots. A bunch of cattle raised in a cage by freaks, and you still think you're human?
You're talking absolute nonsense. We are human, plain and simple.
Lu Linhai's face reddened with agitation. He cast a quick, defensive glance at the group before lowering his voice, his words heavy with desperate conviction.
We're all people, real, breathing people. Don't you forget it?
Stop lying to yourselves. Open your eyes and think back to that city you clawed your way out of.
He sneered, his gaze cutting through their denial.
What did the freaks call you? What was the label they burned into your souls?
Lin Yi's brow furrowed, the words surfacing in his mind like a shard of glass. The memory of that derogatory term was still painfully fresh, a wound that hadn't even begun to scar.
Livestock.
He whispered, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. Brother Lei let out a sharp, cold laugh that lacked any trace of humor. Suddenly, his posture shifted, his voice rising in a crescendo of bitter intensity that filled the cramped shack.
Exactly, livestock. You aren't human in their world, you're just inventory. You're fodder, raised and slaughtered for the freaks. You're the lowest form of existence on this planet, lesser even than the monsters that hunt you.
For a moment, his eyes flickered, a trace of deep, agonizing resentment bleeding through his hardened exterior. His voice dropped to a hollow rasp.
And so am I.
He looked up then, his gaze fixing on Chengdao, who stood stoically in the shadows.
But he's different. He's a god-chosen. He actually has a chance to become a true human.
The hatred in his voice was palpable, a jagged edge directed at the very concept of the god-chosen. It was clear now why he had been so desperate to see Chengdao dead.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Lu Linhai asked, his confusion mounting. He turned to Lin Yi, seeking some kind of anchor in the madness.
Isn't livestock just a name they use? It doesn't change what we are. We're still human, right? And what's this about a god-chosen becoming a true human?
Lin Yi opened his mouth to reply, but Zhang Cheng's calm, analytical voice cut through the tension before he could speak.
Think of it as an ancient slave hierarchy. In the eyes of the master, a slave was never a person. They were property, cattle, tools to be used and discarded. They could be anything the master desired, except human. However, if you're born a god-chosen, you have a path upward. You can rise from the bottom-tier slave class and claim the status of a commoner, a true human in their twisted society.
Zhang Cheng turned his cold gaze toward Lu Linhai, his expression devoid of comfort as he laid out the brutal reality of their existence.
Biologically, yes, we are human. But in this world, we've been stripped of every right that defines humanity. We've been reduced to nothing more than a food source for the things that rule the shadows. We're born into a world we don't understand, and we're destined to end in the same place, rotting inside a freak's stomach.
Brother Lei gave a short, cold snort, a grim acknowledgement of Zhang Cheng's clinical but accurate assessment. Zhang Cheng's clinical breakdown of their world left a heavy, ringing silence in the shack, but it only paved the way for a more disturbing question.
Then who is it?
Chu Kai asked, his brow furrowed in a deep, painful scowl.
Who actually did this to us? Who was the one who stripped us of our humanity and turned us into property?
Is that even a question? It's obvious.
Lu Linhai snapped, his voice sharp with frustration.
It was the freaks. Those monsters did this.
No.
A sudden, shocking realization surged through Lin Yi's mind, cold and sharp as an ice pick. The implications made him realize that the world outside those walls was even more broken, more twisted than he had ever dared to imagine.
The freaks. They might not be the ones responsible for this at all.
If it's not the monsters, then who the hell else could it be?
Lu Linhai asked, his confusion turning to a subtle dread.
People.
Lin Yi said, his gaze shifting to Brother Lei on the ground.
Real people. Exactly what he meant when he talked about the true humans.
In other words, the masters.
Zhang Cheng added, his tone flat and devoid of any comforting doubt. Lin Yi felt his fists clench until his knuckles turned white. The pieces of the puzzle were shifting, forming a picture that was almost too horrific to comprehend.
The human farm. It's not a place for raising livestock. That city we escaped from, it wasn't built for us. It was built to raise freaks.
He thought back to the lethal defense systems installed at the very limits of the city. For so long, they had assumed those machines were designed to stop humans from escaping. But the freaks hid themselves so well. By the time any livestock realized the truth, they were usually halfway down a monster's throat. Escape was already a near impossible feat, especially with the pheromones the monsters left on their prey. A chilling thought took hold. Could those defense systems have been designed for the opposite purpose? To prevent the freaks inside the city from ever leaving the boundaries of the farm? But if the city was a nursery for monsters, then why were high-quality humans like himself and his friends being shipped out? Where were they being sent? Lin Yi's mind raced, but there were still too many missing pieces, too many dark corners of this conspiracy that remained hidden. He looked down at Brother Lei. This man knew more than he was letting on.
I didn't expect you to even know about the human farm.
Brother Lei rasped, a trace of genuine surprise in his eyes.
It seems I really underestimated you, you little livestock.
A flicker of genuine shock crossed Brother Lei's face. He hadn't expected these children from the city to have any inkling of the broader system, let alone the human farm.
I should have just ended you all right there on the road.
He gritted his teeth, his words coming out in a low, venomous hiss.
The moment I stopped that bus, I should have just slit every one of your throats. Then the village I poured my life into wouldn't be a pile of ash right now. Everything I built, destroyed because of you. You damn livestock. You think knowing the truth changes anything? It doesn't. You'll still end up as nothing more than a meal in a freak's belly eventually.
Stop calling us that!
Lu Linhai roared, his anger finally reaching its boiling point.
If you've already given up on being a person, that's your problem. But don't you dare drag us down into your self-pity. Freaks, masters, true humans. I don't care what names they use to make themselves feel important. We are human, and we're going to stay that way.
Zhang Cheng's lips curled into a smirk, and he began to clap slowly, the sound echoing unnaturally in the cramped space.
Well said, Lu Linhai. Truly inspiring.
He turned his mocking gaze toward Brother Lei.
See? Even the gorilla understands the concept of self-worth. Yet here you are, insisting on your own dehumanization. It's honestly pathetic.
Lu Linhai shot a lethal glare at Zhang Cheng for the nickname, but the genius simply ignored it, his focus shifting back to the man pinned on the floor.
Besides, we've already proven we can survive. We made it past the mantis wolves, and we just escaped the hair snail parasites that were infesting your precious village. We're going to keep breathing long after you're gone.
Hair snail parasites?
Chu Kai blinked, his brow furrowing as he processed the unfamiliar name.
Is that what those things were?
The freaks in the village.
Zhang Cheng explained, his voice returning to its clinical baseline.
They're a parasitic species. Biologically, they're classified as hair snail parasites.
Zhang Cheng? How could you possibly know their name?
Chu Yun asked, her voice small and trembling.
He's the one who told me.
Zhang Cheng said, pointing a dismissive finger at Brother Lei. Brother Lei remained silent, but the look on his face was one of absolute bafflement. It was clear he hadn't spoken a word about the parasite's classification to anyone.
Of course he didn't tell me with his mouth.
Zhang Cheng reached into his backpack and pulled out a stack of worn, dirt-stained notebooks, waving them mockingly in front of Brother Lei's face.
Everything I need to know is right here, in this guy's breeding diary. The story of his escape, his burning hatred for the masters, how he found the hair snail parasites, and the sick little agreement he made with them. It's all documented, including his pathetic plan for revenge.
How the hell did you get those?
Brother Lei roared, struggling violently against his bindings. He lunged forward, trying to snatch the notebooks back, but Cheng Dao's grip was like iron. He couldn't move an inch. Zhang Cheng's tone suddenly turned cold and serious, the mocking smirk vanishing from his face.
There's one specific location mentioned in this diary that caught my eye. The place this man originally escaped from, a city known as the City of Oracle.
City of Oracle?
Lu Linhai asked, his dread mounting.
Is that another city like the one we left? Another farm for freaks?
Zhang Cheng shook his head slowly.
According to these notes, the City of Oracle isn't just for farming freaks. It has a much more specialized purpose. It's a place that produces the livestock.
produces livestock?
Chu Kai's frown deepened, a look of utter revulsion crossing his face.
What does that even mean?
It means it's a piglet nursery.
And Cheng Dao interjected, his voice gravelly and devoid of emotion.
A pig farm doesn't always raise its own stock from birth. They buy piglets from nurseries. The humans on those farms were likely shipped out from a place just like that.
Then why wasn't he shipped out?
Lu Linhai asked, gesturing toward Brother Lei.
If he's just livestock from a nursery, why is he still here?
Zheng Cheng looked down at Brother Lei, his eyes like two pieces of flint.
Because he's breeding stock, and a pig farm never ships out the stock it needs to keep the production line running.